heavy rain. By the rockery in the imperial garden, a lush banana tree stood, its vibrant green leaves looking even more vivid under the dense raindrops. Emily walked towards the imperial study with a slight frown. Though she was under the corridor, the rising mist still slightly dampened her hair.
The misty rain blurred her vision, but even with just a glance, Emily was certain that the person she saw was Lucas.
Lucas?
A flicker of panic flashed through her usually calm eyes, and her steps faltered slightly. Quickening her pace, just as Emily was about to reach the turn in the corridor, a commanding and cold voice rang out.
Empress Dowager.
Her heart skipped a beat. Emily turned her head and saw Lucas, dressed in black, standing by the banana tree. A guard beside him respectfully held a green oil paper umbrella over him. His posture was upright, his expression arrogant, with sharp eyebrows, dark eyes, and thin lips. His handsome face was unparalleled, yet exuded extreme defiance.
Regent, what a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. I've been waiting for you.
She wore a light purple long dress, with peony patterns faintly embroidered on the wide sleeves. Her hair was styled in a sophisticated bun, adorned only with a green hairpin. Her eyes were like water, her eyebrows like distant mountains, and a few strands of hair, dampened by the mist, framed her face, making her look both delicate and slightly aloof.
What does the regent want?
Lucas glanced at the palace maids still kneeling and said indifferently.
You may leave.
Yes.
Without hesitation, the palace maids respectfully bowed and retreated. Emily frowned slightly. She knew that Lucas held immense power in the court, even brazenly referring to himself as I. But when did the palace maids in the palace start obeying him as well? The guards following Lucas had also retreated, leaving only the two of them in the corridor.
What does the regent want? Can you say it now?
Is the Empress Dowager heading to the imperial study?
That doesn't seem to concern the regent.
The next moment, Lucas suddenly pulled Emily towards him.
What are you doing?
Tell the young emperor not to overestimate himself. And
He reached out, gently pinching Emily's chin, his eyes filled with coldness.
Emily, is this what you schemed so hard to achieve?
With that, Lucas released her with a hint of disdain, glanced at her once more, and then turned and left with a cold smile. Stumbling back a few steps, Emily watched his retreating figure. Even in the misty rain, his arrogance was undiminished. Her chin still carried a faint warmth, and Emily trembled slightly, her heart aching.
Emily.
Since she decided to enter the palace for the selection 5 years ago, Lucas had never called her that again. In the end, she had wronged him. But she was her father's only daughter, a woman of the Lawrence family. Many things were beyond her control. Stumbling back a few steps, Emily watched his retreating figure. Even in the misty rain, his arrogance was undiminished. Her chin still carried a faint warmth, and Emily trembled slightly, her heart aching.
Lucas.
Since she decided to enter the palace for the selection 5 years ago, Lucas had never called her by her name again. In the end, she had wronged him, but she was her father's only daughter, a woman of the Lawrence family. Many things were beyond her control. The Queen Dowager had merely caught a cold, which wasn't serious, but her coughing was quite severe. Despite it not being serious, Emily still needed to personally attend to her. Returning to the Spring Palace, the young eunuch guarding the door saw Emily and quickly knelt to greet her.
Who are you?
Reporting to the Empress Dowager, we were transferred here today by the Emperor's order.
The Emperor?
Upon entering the Spring Palace, Emily realized that in just half a day, all the servants in the Spring Palace had been replaced, except for one maid she had taken out with her. Her heart grew cold as she looked at Ethan standing there, frowning.
Your son greets mother.
Emperor, may I ask why you did this? Replacing all the servants in the Spring Palace suddenly, are you trying to monitor me?
Ethan addressed the maid behind Emily.
You may leave.
Then he turned to Emily.
Mother, these servants were personally selected by me. They are more discreet.
What do you mean?
Ethan smiled, a hint of pride in his eyes.
I noticed that Mother has been feeling down lately, so I prepared a gift for you.
A gift? What kind of gift requires replacing all the servants in the Spring Palace?
When Emily saw the 5 handsome men standing before her, she was stunned.
Emperor, what is the meaning of this?
Mother, these are the companions I selected for you.
For a moment, Emily was too shocked to speak.
Are you out of your mind?
Although she and Ethan were not mother and son by blood, she was still his mother in name. Ethan actually sent companions to her palace. Didn't he realize this was akin to dishonoring the late emperor?
Why would Mother say that? These were personally selected by me, and rest assured, the servants of the Spring Palace will not leak a word.
Suppressing the storm in her heart, Emily coldly dismissed the companions.
No need. Emperor, please take them away.
The companions in the Spring Palace were quickly dismissed. However, there was one exception.
Why do you refuse to leave?
Empress Dowager, please forgive me. I am Jonah, not a companion, but the former young Marquis of the Bennet family.
The Bennet family? 2 years ago, Marquis Bennet was convicted of embezzlement. Although the Bennet family was not completely implicated, it had fallen into decline. The Bennet family did have a young Marquis, but it was said he had a congenital illness and had been recuperating. Since you are the young Marquis, why did you enter the palace?
Empress Dowager, please forgive me. I have a congenital illness and recently learned that the medicinal spring in the rear garden of the Spring Palace could help alleviate and cure my condition. As my condition worsened, I had no choice but to disguise myself as a companion to enter the palace for treatment.
Emily frowned, looking at the person before her, who indeed seemed ill. The Spring Palace did have a medicinal spring, formed by the various herbs planted around it. However, whether Jonah's words were true or not remained to be verified.
Empress Dowager, please do not doubt me. I had no other choice. Otherwise, I would not have entered the palace under such a guise.
I will have this matter investigated. As for you, explain yourself to the Emperor.
Yes, thank you, Empress Dowager.
Jonah bowed his head in response, his pale lips forming a faint, bitter smile. After the autumn rain, the rare good weather finally persuaded Emily to leave her room, following the maid's suggestion.
Empress Dowager, the begonias in the rear garden of the Spring Palace are blooming beautifully. Why not go and have a look, bask in the sun, and take a walk? It might make you feel better.
Emily was momentarily stunned. The begonias were already in bloom. She nodded.
All right.
As she prepared to walk closer, Emily heard the sound of a flute.
Do you know who is playing the flute?
This is the rear garden, not far from Mr. Jonah's residence. It must be Mr. Jonah playing the flute.
Mentioning Jonah, Emily remembered that since he moved into the Spring Palace, she hadn't seen him. She wondered how his health was, whether he had recovered. Passing through a few blooming begonias, Emily first smelled the scent of medicine, then saw Jonah sitting not far from the medicinal spring, playing the flute. Seeing this scene, Emily's heart trembled, memories flashing back to when she first met Lucas. When Emily came back to her senses, she realized the flute music had stopped, and Jonah had walked up to her, kneeling to pay his respects. His face was still pale, but better than when they first met.
Rise, no need for formalities. It was I who disturbed you.
Thank you, Empress Dowager.
How is your illness?
It was congenital, not so easily cured. But
what?
But my mother is concerned. The medicinal spring can alleviate it somewhat, which eases her mind. Otherwise, I wouldn't trouble the Empress Dowager.
It's not a bother. It's just that, given our statuses, there are some inconveniences. But Don't you want to recover?
Jonah's pale face showed a hint of detachment and tranquility. He smiled lightly.
Life and death are unpredictable. Morning dew, sun, moon, and stars, how long one lives, I do not wish to force.
Emily looked at Jonah in a daze, feeling a sudden surge of envy. Perhaps it was Jonah's detachment and calmness that led to more interactions between them in the following days. When the weather was good, Emily would bask in the sun in the rear garden of the Spring Palace, listening to Jonah play the flute, chatting casually. Today, she was to go to the royal temple to pray for her aunt, a ritual that required a month. The carriage wheels rolled, and they had reached the outskirts of the capital. The creaking sound of friction disturbed her, making her restless.
I only hope the current situation could last a bit longer, until my father's health improves.
Closing her eyes slowly, Emily leaned tiredly inside the carriage. Suddenly, a jolt almost threw her out.
What happened?
Emily had just lifted the curtain when an arrow shot into the side of the carriage.
Assassins! Protect the Empress Dowager!
The accompanying guards drew their swords, shouting. Dozens of black-clad men appeared from nowhere, swords clashing. After a brief fight, it was clear the guards were no match. Emily saw the sudden appearance of the black-clad men and had no time to think about why they were after her. She was just going to the temple, accompanied by only a small team of guards, who couldn't resist.
Empress Dowager, please leave first.
Emily didn't hesitate and followed them, but the black-clad men pursued closely. They had only gone a short distance before being surrounded again. The guards were entangled, and a black-clad man lunged at Emily. She had no martial skills and could only dodge instinctively, but the attacker was determined.
Who goes there?
The sound of hooves approached. From a distance, Emily saw someone riding towards her. In that moment of distraction, a flash of cold light, and she felt a sharp pain in her chest. The black-clad man's sword pierced through her chest and was quickly withdrawn. He shouted to his companions.
Retreat.
Falling slowly to the ground, feeling the blood flowing from her body, Emily was overwhelmed with fear. Was she going to die? Her vision blurred, and she saw someone running towards her. That figure was so familiar. But as she tried to see clearly, she fell into complete darkness, losing consciousness. Emily stumbled back a few steps, watching Lucas's retreating figure. Even in the misty rain, his arrogance remained undiminished. Her chin still carried a faint warmth, and she trembled slightly, her heart aching. After 7 or 8 days, Emily was finally able to get out of bed. It wasn't that her injuries were healing slowly, but rather that Lucas did not allow it. Leaving the meditation room, Emily walked slowly. These past few days of lying down had made her whole body stiff.
This isn't a royal temple, but an ancient one on a hillside in the suburbs of the capital. Although it's smaller, it has a more serene and elegant atmosphere. Who could have wanted to harm me? And why?
Frowning in thought, Emily wondered who would benefit from her demise. Or perhaps, was the target the Lawrence family?
Just able to get out and you're standing here in the wind.
An unhappy voice sounded behind her, interrupting Emily's thoughts. Turning around, she saw Lucas frowning. Emily did not speak. During this time, Lucas's attitude seemed to have changed. This new demeanor of his made her feel somewhat unsettled.
I'm not cold.
I'm not cold.
Emily said, reaching to remove the robe and return it to Lucas, but he held her hand down.
If you don't want to go back to the meditation room immediately, keep it on.
Withdrawing her hand, Emily knew that Lucas meant what he said, and she indeed did not want to go back just yet. Emily wandered around the temple, with Lucas walking beside her.
This ancient temple doesn't seem very large, and the royal temple isn't far away. Do pilgrims come here often?
Do you want to know?
Lucas stopped and looked at her. Emily was taken aback and nodded.
Follow me.
They walked slowly along a stone path, arriving at the back garden of the ancient temple. Looking at a lush ancient tree in the garden, Lucas spoke.
It's because of this.
This tree?
Lucas nodded, looking at the tree.
This tree is nearly 1,000 years old. It was here when the temple was built. Later, it was said that the tree absorbed the spiritual essence of the temple's incense offerings for hundreds of years and became highly spiritual. Pilgrims believe that if they sincerely make a wish in front of this tree, it will come true.
So, this ancient temple has managed to withstand the pressure from the royal temple and maintain a steady stream of pilgrims because of this tree?
Emily chuckled, looking at the tree, just in time to see a few female pilgrims kneeling and making wishes.
Yes. Do you want to try?
Is there really a tree in this world that can grant wishes? It's probably just a legend.
Seeing Emily looking at the tree, Lucas laughed softly.
Go make a wish.
Emily originally wanted to shake her head but hesitated for a moment and then walked towards the tree. Seeing the people kneeling beside her, Emily was about to kneel slowly but was stopped by Lucas.
You're injured.
If I want my wish to come true, I should kneel. What if it doesn't work otherwise?
If the tree doesn't work, then you have me. I will make your wish come true.
Her heart trembled suddenly. Emily looked at Lucas, trying to find a hint of jest in his expression, but saw only sincerity. The autumn wind blew, and the ancient tree beside them rustled as if responding to all those who made wishes to it. Facing the ancient tree, Emily slowly closed her eyes. In that moment, she felt as if something in her heart had melted. Having stayed in the ancient temple for more than half a month, Emily grew increasingly worried.
Lucas, I want to return to the capital.
She said after finishing the medicine in her bowl, looking at Lucas who was sitting beside her.
Your injury.
My injury has healed. Thank you for saving me, but I can't stay in this temple forever.
The next day, the sun hid behind the clouds, occasionally casting a few rays of chilly sunlight. It felt oppressive. After leaving the temple, Emily and Lucas boarded the carriage together. The two remained unusually silent throughout the journey until the carriage stopped.
Get off.
Emily lifted the curtain and looked at the unfamiliar scenery outside, puzzled.
Where is this?
Lucas got off the carriage first and extended his hand to Emily.
Come down first. I'll take you somewhere.
After hesitating for a moment, Emily took Lucas's hand and slowly got off the carriage. In front of her was a vast sea of bamboo. The two walked along a stone path through the bamboo forest, the autumn wind rustling the leaves. Emily looked at the green bamboo around her, a smile tugging at her lips.
I remember you said you liked bamboo the most.
Yes, I did.
I also remember you said you wanted to build a small house surrounded by green bamboo, where you could stay for a few days whenever you wanted peace.
Emily stopped, staring at Lucas in a daze. Seeing the smile on his face, she also smiled.
You remember that?
Back then, she said that mostly because she felt her father was too strict and always wanted to find a place to hide. Lucas lowered his head, looking at Emily. After a long while, he shifted his gaze to the depths of the bamboo forest.
Emily, do you still want that small house?
Emily's heart suddenly pounded as she followed Lucas's gaze. In the depths of the bamboo forest, under the green shadows, there was indeed a bamboo house. Almost in a daze, Emily walked over and looked at the bamboo house. In front of the house, small pebbles lined the path, flanked by drooping green bamboo, forming a natural emerald barrier. The house was entirely made of bamboo, its slightly faded green exuding a unique fragrance. On a small table beside the house, a chessboard was placed. Everything was almost exactly as she had imagined.
This.
She wanted to speak but found her voice hoarse, her eyes stinging, unable to say anything. Their eyes met, and Lucas finally showed a hint of helplessness, gently embracing Emily.
I prepared this a long time ago, thinking that when you regretted it and apologized to me, I would bring you here.
Tears instantly rolled down, and Emily trembled slightly.
Then why are you bringing me here now?
I had no choice. You are so stubborn. Even though you left me, you wouldn't say a soft word in front of me.
Lucas released Emily, looking into her eyes and speaking slowly.
I was afraid of pushing you further away, so I had to give in first. Emily, don't leave me again, okay?
He was indeed afraid. He thought he wanted revenge, but every time he saw her tears, his heart ached terribly. As she became colder towards him, he even felt a sense of panic.
Since you refuse to yield, I will take the initiative. Now, as long as I can keep you, I don't care about anything else.
Tears fell in large drops as Emily looked at Lucas. Finally, she took the initiative to embrace him. In the deep shadows of the bamboo, under the clear moonlight, Emily had been living in this bamboo house for 2 days. Yet, looking at the scene before her, she still felt a sense of unreality at times.
Emily, do you like it here?
I like it.
Since you like it, how about staying here forever?
Stay here forever? Emily's heart stirred, but she didn't speak. Could she really stay here forever? What about the Lawrence family?
Emily, stay. I hope you stay.
In Lucas's eyes, the usual arrogance and disdain had faded, leaving behind undisguised love and a hint of pleading. Without giving any reason, just a simple hope that she would stay. Looking into Lucas's eyes, Emily was stunned, almost losing the ability to think or hesitate. Under Lucas's gaze, Emily's eyes instantly became moist, and she nodded heavily.
Okay.
His dark eyes immediately lit up, like stars and fireworks in the night. Lucas leaned forward and gently kissed Emily. This kiss was different from before, without a trace of anger or punishment. Instead, it was filled with deep love and cherishing. As their lips and teeth intertwined, the scent of apricot wine spread between them, making everything around them seem filled with a sweet fragrance. The temperature in the air gradually rose, and Lucas's kisses became more passionate, moving from her lips to her neck. Finally, Lucas released Emily, picked her up horizontally, and carried her into the bamboo house, gently placing her on the bed.
Emily, will you give yourself to me?
Emily looked at Lucas, her heart pounding as if it would leap out of her chest. Slowly, she reached out and wrapped her arms around Lucas's neck, taking the initiative to kiss him. Outside, the night wind grew stronger, making the bamboo shadows sway more violently, and the cold intensified. But inside, the temperature gradually rose, leading to a night of passion. In the morning, as the faint light filtered into the room, Lucas lay on his side, watching the sleeping Emily. His heart was filled with both regret and joy. Emily was still a maiden. In the 5 years she had been in the palace, had she never been favored? Or was it that she was unwilling? Gently kissing Emily's forehead, Lucas's heart suddenly trembled. Narrator, tone, serious. When Emily woke up, Lucas's shadow was already gone. As she was halfway through her breakfast, she heard footsteps outside the bamboo house.
Emily, tone, hopeful back so soon?
Narrator, tone, excited. Emily's heart leaped with joy, and she hurried out of the bamboo house.
Emily, tone, hopeful. Why are you back so soon?
Narrator, tone, surprised. Before she could finish her sentence, she froze in place when she saw who it was. Holding a green flute, dressed in white, the person before her was none other than Jonah. And behind him stood dozens of people.
Emily, tone, surprised. What are you doing here?
Jonah, tone, serious. The Empress Dowager is indeed here.
Emily, tone, confused. How did you find me?
Jonah, tone, friendly. Does the Empress Dowager not want me to come in?
Narrator, tone, serious. After a moment of silence, Emily stepped out of the room.
Emily, tone, serious. If you have something to say it here.
Jonah, tone, serious. Empress Dowager, you have been staying with the regent these past few days, haven't you?
Emily, tone, confused yes.
Narrator, tone, suspenseful. Seeing the questions in Emily's eyes, Jonah gave a bitter smile.
Jonah, tone, serious Empress Dowager, you don't need to guess. I am indeed here on the Emperor's orders. However.
Emily, tone, serious however what?
Jonah, tone, sad however, thanks to the Empress Dowager's previous care, I indeed wanted to come and inform you. The Lawrence family is in trouble.
Emily, tone, terrified what? Say that again.
Jonah, tone, worried the Lawrence family is in trouble. All the members of the Lawrence family have been imprisoned in the dungeon.
Emily, tone, shocked impossible. Given Ethan's current situation, how could he suddenly take action against the Lawrence family?
Narrator, tone, suspenseful. Could it be that he knew about the military seal and wanted to use the Lawrence family to threaten her? No, that didn't make sense either.
Jonah, tone, hesitant. It wasn't Ethan who took action against the Lawrence family, it was Lucas.
Narrator, tone, shocked. When Jonah uttered those 3 words, Emily was completely stunned.
Emily, tone, shocked Lucas.
Jonah, tone, apologetic. I'm sorry, I am here on the Emperor's orders. Once the Empress Dowager returns to the palace, everything will become clear.
Stumbling back a few steps, Emily watched his retreating figure. Even in the misty rain, his arrogance was undiminished. Her chin still carried a faint warmth, and Emily trembled slightly, her heart aching.
Lucas.
Since she decided to enter the palace for the selection 5 years ago, Lucas had never called her that again. In the end, she had wronged him. But she was her father's only daughter, a woman of the Lawrence family. Many things were beyond her control. Lucas frowned deeply. Emily's words made his heart ache to the point of numbness. Without further explanation, Lucas avoided Emily's gaze and reached out to pull her.
I'll take you back.
Lucas, let go.
Emily didn't struggle, but it was clear she was extremely averse to Lucas's touch. The oil paper umbrella shielded them from the rain. Lucas seemed not to hear Emily's words and encircled her in his arms. His intuition told him that if he let go of her now, they would only drift further apart in the future. And indeed, he had deceived her before.
What is the regent doing?
The carriage curtain was lifted, and Ethan calmly stepped down from the carriage. The eunuch behind Ethan held a bright yellow umbrella, glanced at Emily and Lucas with slight surprise, and then quickly lowered his head. Lucas frowned, looking at Ethan with intense displeasure in his eyes.
I am here to escort the Empress Dowager back to the palace.
This matter does not concern you, Your Majesty.
Lucas held Emily tightly, showing no intention of letting go. Seeing this scene, Ethan's lips curled into a faint smile as he slowly turned his gaze to Emily.
Mother, I hope you remember that, after all, public opinion can be terrifying.
Public opinion? Now that the Lawrence family has reached this point, what do I have to fear from public opinion?
She forcefully pried Lucas's hands off her. In his anxious and panicked eyes, she coldly said,
I am returning to the palace now, so there is no need to trouble the regent.
The rain fell unimpeded once again as Emily walked step by step towards Ethan's carriage. Behind her, Lucas stood rigidly, his raised right arm lingering in the air. Night fell at the Spring Palace. Emily leaned silently against the wall, watching the candlelight flicker on the table not far away. 3 days had passed, and her anger had gradually subsided, but the pain and guilt in her heart had not diminished at all. The candle flame flickered slightly, and Emily keenly heard a faint sound from the window. Her eyes darkened as she slowly stood up and walked to the window. Looking at the firmly locked brass latch, Emily hesitated for a moment but ultimately did not open the window. Outside, Lucas stood alone in a black robe, looking at the shadow cast on the window. He knew that Emily was on the other side of the window.
Emily, I want to talk to you.
Inside, Emily did not speak but also did not leave the window. Seeing that the person inside did not respond, Lucas reached out and gently touched the shadow on the window.
I know you have hatred and pain in your heart, but I came today to tell you that I regret it. The people of the Lawrence family have been released, and they have all returned home. Your father's situation was not my intention either. Emily, every word I said in the bamboo house was true. Can you forgive me?
If she hadn't heard it with her own ears, Emily could never have imagined that one day Lucas would speak in such a pleading tone. A bitter smile appeared on her lips as she leaned against the window. After a long while, she slowly said,
Lucas, perhaps we were both wrong.
Hearing Emily speak, Lucas felt a slight relief from his panic, but before he could respond, he heard Emily continue.
Lucas, our meeting 5 years ago may have been the biggest mistake. Whether it was you, me, or the Lawrence family, none of us would be in this situation today.
Emily's words made Lucas's heart ache, and he closed his eyes in pain.
Emily, do you know, I have never regretted meeting you.
His tone was calm, without a trace of anger or resentment, as if he were stating the most genuine feeling. In his heart, all the words of apology and plea could no longer be spoken. A deep chill filled Lucas's heart.
Emily, do you really not want to return to that bamboo house?
Emily did not answer Lucas's question but spoke through the window.
Lucas, do you know that the Lawrence family's military seal has always been in my possession?
Really?
Emily nodded, then realized they were separated by the window. A bitter smile appeared on her lips as she coldly said,
I know you and Ethan both want the Lawrence family's military seal. On the day I left the Ministry of Justice's prison, I had already handed the seal over to Ethan.
In the night wind, Lucas frowned.
Emily, do you want Ethan to win?
Lucas, at this point, I naturally hope that the winner can be me. And that bamboo house, to me, is the greatest humiliation.
Her words, though lightly spoken, were like a sharp blade, piercing Lucas's heart. Outside, Lucas stood for a long time, his heart completely filled with coldness.
Emily, I will be the king of East Chin.
White Pine, winter has arrived. This winter in the Eastern Dawn Kingdom was particularly tumultuous. A month ago, the young Emperor Ethan, who had almost no real power, suddenly mobilized 400,000 troops. 100,000 were stationed in the capital, and 300,000 took over the defense of several key cities outside the capital. Soon after, he issued an edict, condemning the regent Lucas for his overreach and ambitious intentions, ordering his execution and the death of many ministers who supported him. The young emperor, long without power, suddenly displayed thunderous means. However, the powerful regent Lucas had mysteriously disappeared a few days before the edict was issued. Just when everyone thought Lucas had fled upon hearing the news, he suddenly raised an army in Imo Prefecture, hundreds of miles from the capital, citing the emperor's incompetence, and marched towards the capital. The court situation was once again in turmoil. Outside the capital, in Lucas's camp.
Regent, news just came from the Spring Palace that Ethan plans to appoint Grace as a first-rank general to defend the city, but the Empress Dowager refused. Ethan seemed quite angry when he left.
Oliver reported, bowing his head. He really couldn't understand the regent's thoughts. Clearly, he still cared about Miss Emily, as the news from the Spring Palace never stopped. Yet, when Oliver referred to her as Miss Emily, the regent corrected him, saying she was the Empress Dowager of Eastern Dawn.
I know.
Lucas stood with his hands behind his back, his cold, chiseled features and dark robes exuding a natural aura of authority.
Ethan's move is to use Emily? A petty trick.
Regent, should we take any action regarding the Spring Palace?
Would Ethan use Emily to threaten the regent?
No need. She's not a fool. Besides, what I want now is the world.
If Ethan really had such plans, Emily would never sit idly by. Even if Ethan used Emily to threaten him now, it might not work. Lucas moved quickly, and the siege had already begun. In the Spring Palace, Emily was also planning the Lawrence family's escape route. She had long reached an agreement with her brother to leave everything behind and take the family away to ensure their safety. What she needed was an opportunity, a chance to leave the palace, even the city, successfully. When Jonah brought Emily out, Lucas's pupils contracted sharply. Even Oliver, standing behind Lucas, was stunned. Hadn't Emily already left? How could she be here?
Lucas, do you still think I have no chance now?
Ethan sneered, not missing the momentary tension in Lucas's expression. He just didn't know how far Lucas would go for Emily.
Do you think you can threaten me with her? Ethan, don't forget, it was Emily who handed over the military seal to help you against me. I didn't expect you to be so delusional.
Lucas's words pained Emily, but at the same time, she felt a bit relieved.
See, you really overestimated yourselves.
Really? But I don't think so.
Because of the jade flute, Lucas's grip on his sword tightened, but his face remained calm.
Regent, with just a little force, I can break her throat. Do you really not care?
Jonah looked at Lucas, his eyes filled with hatred.
Ha, Jonah, if you want me to be silenced, shouldn't you at least let me know why?
That day, Jonah had left the palace with her. After all, it was his idea, so when he proposed leaving together, Emily didn't refuse. Moreover, the palace was in a critical situation, staying would only bring trouble. But she didn't expect that after leaving the palace, Jonah would hold her hostage. She was secretly brought back to the palace and imprisoned, and today, when she was brought out again, it had come to this. A fleeting look of guilt flashed in Jonah's eyes, but it was only for a moment before it was replaced by cold indifference.
Empress Dowager, I apologize. If you must blame someone, blame the regent. If it weren't for him a few years ago, my father wouldn't have met such a tragic end.
So, from the moment you entered the palace, it was all planned, and using the hot spring to recuperate was just an excuse?
Yes, it was all planned by Ethan and me.
Jonah replied to Emily's question, but his eyes were fixed on Lucas.
The attempt on her outside the capital was also your doing?
The regent is indeed clever. I was merely helping the regent see his own heart clearly.
It was you.
Emily's expression turned completely cold as she looked at Jonah. She had originally thought it was because of the military seal, but she hadn't expected that the attempt was to manipulate Lucas.
I'm sorry, but I had to do it.
I used to admire you, thinking you were carefree and fearless. But it turns out it was all a facade.
I am merely a person filled with hatred.
The carefree and fearless version of himself had died long ago when his family was destroyed.
There's no need to wait any longer, Lucas. It's time for you to make a choice.
What are the options?
I want you to withdraw your troops and leave the capital immediately.
As soon as Ethan finished speaking, Jonah suddenly interjected.
No!
What?
Lucas, let everyone leave, but you must stay.
You're insane!
No, the Lucas who had secretly acted against the Lawrence family never had a weakness.
What makes you think I would agree?
Lucas's words caused Ethan's emotions to waver. He hesitated and glanced at Jonah, feeling that the demand was too much and that Lucas wouldn't agree.
The regent should think carefully. My patience is limited.
Emily wanted to struggle, but after being confined for several days, she was already weak, and her hands were firmly held by the Imperial guards behind her, leaving her with no options. Feeling the coldness emanating from the jade flute, Emily instinctively wanted to look at Lucas, but she forcibly restrained the urge.
I don't want Lucas to save me.
When Jonah raised the jade flute high, Emily involuntarily closed her eyes, but in the next moment, she heard Lucas's slightly panicked voice.
I agree.
Her heart trembled heavily, and Emily opened her eyes in surprise to look at Lucas. Despite the distance, she could clearly see his expression. Lucas's gaze was resolute, and any trace of hesitation had vanished.
Release her, and I will do as you say.
Regent,
Oliver, standing behind Lucas, frowned and spoke up.
Everyone, leave.
His voice left no room for argument.
Regent, this is absolutely unacceptable.
He knelt on one knee, his face tense. If they retreated now, not only would they hand over the victory within their grasp, but if the regent was left alone here.
Retreat.
Lucas, are you crazy? I don't need you to save me, do you hear me? I don't need you to save me. In this life and the next, I don't want to see you.
Ethan still had hundreds of Imperial guards at his command. If Lucas's men left now, it would be a dead end for him.
Emily, I can't do it.
Initially, he got involved in politics and became the powerful regent because of her. Later, he rebelled against the odds, wanting to prove to her that he would conquer the world of Dongchen. And now, he realized that in his heart, whether it was the kingdom of Dongchen or anything else, it could never surpass her.
I'll say it one last time, retreat.
Despite their reluctance, they ultimately obeyed the order. As the palace gates closed heavily once again, Lucas stood alone before hundreds of Imperial guards, showing no trace of fear.
I've done it. Let her go.
Jonah curled his lips, trying to smile, but found no satisfaction in his heart.
Lucas, you truly haven't disappointed me.
Jonah ordered his men to release the tear-streaked Emily and slowly withdrew the jade flute in his hand. But Lucas paid no attention to Jonah's words, his eyes still fixed solely on Emily. The winter air was bone-chilling, and Emily felt the coldness on her face. Tears blurred her vision as she looked at Lucas. Behind him, the sky was gloomy, with dark clouds tinged with a hint of green. He stood proudly, as if in a painting of the Jiangnan water towns, his handsome and aloof demeanor captivating. Emily struggled to run towards Lucas, but the sound of arrows whizzing past her ears startled her. Turning back in surprise, she saw arrows. The Imperial guards in the front row had somehow drawn their crossbows, and the cold gleam of the arrows flew past Emily, aiming at Lucas. Seeing Emily caught in the midst of the arrows, Lucas's heart tightened. He swung his sleeve to deflect the arrows, his cold eyes fixed on Jonah and Ethan.
Ethan, Jonah, your target is me.
Ethan sneered at Lucas but showed no intention of stopping the Imperial guards. Jonah, however, looked at Lucas, raised his hand slightly, signaling the Imperial guards to stop.
Lucas, if you're worried, you know what to do.
As long as he died, Emily would naturally be free from any further entanglement.
Millie's heart skipped a beat as she looked at Jonah in shock, who had already drawn his bowstring.
The arrow flew towards her. Without a second thought, Emily quickly stepped aside, trying to block the arrow.
The arrow pierced through flesh, but it wasn't Emily's body it struck. Seeing Lucas standing in front of her, the arrowhead piercing through his chest from his back, Emily stood there in a daze, taking a long time to react.
How could this be? How could this be?
Lucas, with a hint of a smile in his eyes, looked at Emily and gently wiped away her tears.
Emily, don't cry.
Lucas, you're a fool, the biggest fool in the world.
That night, they had already severed all ties. She was the one who handed over the military token to deal with him. But why had things turned out this way?
Eyeing Emily's tears, Lucas's face showed a satisfied smile.
Emily, you see, you can't bear to lose me.
Even though she had just said she never wanted to see him again in this life or the next, he knew that in her heart, Emily had never let him go. Just like he hadn't.
Yes, Lucas, I don't want you to leave. I can't bear to lose you. You can't leave.
Seeing the large wet patch on Lucas's chest, though the dark robe hid the color of the blood, Emily's heart was in excruciating pain.
The intense pain in his chest seemed to ease a bit with her words. Lucas grasped Emily's hand tightly but couldn't stand steadily, collapsing to his knees.
Lucas.
Emily frantically held Lucas, her hands already stained crimson from his robe.
Emily, I have so much I want to say to you.
Okay, you say it, I'm listening.
These 5 years, I always thought I hated you. I wanted you to regret, even to suffer. But later, I realized that seeing you cry made my heart ache even more.
In the regent's mansion, he deliberately favored others, even humiliated and troubled her, just to make Emily admit her regret. But when he saw her faint, his heart panicked as if it would jump out of his chest. Every time after that, seeing her in pain, seeing her cry, his heart never found peace. It was then that he realized his love for her had never disappeared.
Lucas, I regret it. I really regret it now. From 5 years ago, I was wrong. All of this is because of me.
Full of bitterness and pain, it was only at this moment that Emily realized that the choice she thought was right that night was the biggest mistake, a mistake that now caused her heart-wrenching pain.
Emily, don't blame yourself. This moment, it's all my choice. Emily, I want to know, in your heart, is there still?
Lucas, I love you. Even though I kept lying to myself, from the moment we met until now, I have never let go of the love in my heart. Lucas, I love you.
Well, that's good. Actually, I knew it. That day, in front of the ancient tree, you made a wish that included me, didn't you?
Yes. Lucas, do you remember? You said that if the ancient tree didn't grant wishes, you would.
What was your wish?
Lucas's face was gradually losing color, but the tenderness in his eyes grew stronger, as if he wanted to express all the love he had suppressed in his heart for the past 5 years. Tears fell one by one. Holding Lucas, Emily smiled.
I said that every spring from now on, I want to watch the apricot blossoms fall with you. Lucas, you said that if the ancient tree didn't grant wishes, you would make it happen. You can't break your promise, you absolutely can't.
In her eyes, it seemed as if she saw the apricot blossoms of that spring. Lucas's smile was bright, but his vision was gradually blurring. He struggled to lift his head and slowly caressed Emily's face.
Emily, I'm sorry. In this life, I have to break my promise. In the next life, in the bamboo forests, through all seasons, at the ends of the earth, I will always be with you.
His hands suddenly fell, and his pale face still carried a faint smile. His dark eyes were now tightly closed, as if he wanted to lock in the last image of Emily he saw.
Lucas, look at me. Open your eyes, please. Lucas, I haven't apologized to you yet. I still have so much to say to you. Lucas.
Emily sat there, talking to herself for a long time. It wasn't until the gloomy sky began to drop large snowflakes, covering her shoulders, that she truly believed Lucas would never open his eyes again. The snow danced in the sky, as if it wanted to swallow everything in the world. Emily gently brushed the snow off Lucas's face. Her mind suddenly recalled a summer rainstorm. The lush green banana tree was strikingly beautiful, but it couldn't compare to the elegance of the person under the umbrella. And between her and Lucas, they never saw another spring together. With Lucas's passing, everything settled. History always favors the victors, and after all the turmoil subsided, it could only become a topic for idle conversation. In an ancient temple not far from the capital, the 1,000-year-old tree, said to be blessed by incense, inexplicably withered and died last winter.